afternoon, and welcome to day 15 of the 2021 Milwaukee Film Festival presented by Associated Bank. I'm Kara, and I'm the artistic director here at Milwaukee Film, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to a conversation with Diane Quon, which will be moderated by Laj Wagre. Laj and Diane are both multiple MFF alums. They've screened their work with us in person and virtually for a number of years. And I'm really excited for this conversation around documentary production, API identity, virtual festivals, and probably some Cartamquin love. I'm just anticipating some topics, but I'm excited to see what else they bring us. I consider them both friends of the festival, so I'm really excited to hear from them today. A few housekeeping items. We do have our double up. We're in the final day, the final stretch, and we are so close to meeting our goal. As you've heard, Susan and Bob Michelet have generously offered us $75,000 if we can raise that same amount during the festival. It was $50,000 first, but we met that, so they pushed us further. And we have just a couple $1,000s to go before midnight tonight. So now is your time. If you've been waiting, you want to make sure you make a splash on closing day, make us a little nervous. Here's your chance. You can text double up to 44321. You can go to our website, mkefilm.org/donate. Or if you're not a Milwaukee Film member, and for 15 days you've been hearing about how cool Milwaukee Film members are, you can join us as a member, mkefilm.org/members. All of those dollars get doubled, and every donation is entered into a raffle to win a private screening at the Oriental Theater when we reopen later this year. So there's no reason not to donate. Any amount is doubled. Any amount gets you entered into that raffle, and every amount helps us continue to survive and thrive as a nonprofit. Our members help us do that throughout the year. We are so grateful to members for your support. We know you love films. We know you love the super secret member screening that you got to see for free yesterday. But we also love that you help us achieve our mission, bringing education programs, masterclasses like this one to filmmakers at a really low cost so that everyone can kind of absorb all of the greatness that folks like Diane have to share with us. Tonight, we will be having our awards ceremony virtually right here where you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, starting at 7 p.m. Central. So be sure to tune in to see what films win our audience awards, our juried awards, all that good stuff. And if you have questions or comments during this event and you're watching live, throw those in the chat where you are. They'll make their way to us here, and Laj will try to fold them into the conversation however is possible. With that, I'm going to get out of the way and turn the stage over to Laj Wagre.
Wait. I was muted. Sorry. Welcome. welcome. I'm so excited to be in a conversation with you here, Dan. I'm although very sad that we can't meet in person. Don't like that it's virtual. But I would like to introduce you first before we get into a conversation. For those of you who do not know, Diane is an Academy and Emmy Award-winning producer with over 17 years of marketing experience at NBC and Paramount Pictures. Currently, she's based in Chicago, very close to us, and is producing both fiction and documentary films. Diane is a producer with producing multiple films at Cartamquin Films, which we both have a relationship with, including she was the producer on the Oscar-nominated and Peabody and Sundance Award-winning film Minding the Gap with director Bing Liu, Dilemma of Desire with Peabody Award-winning director Maria Finizzo, and Finding Ying with director Jenny Shi. She's also developing a fiction film based on a New York Times bestseller, Hotel on Corner of Bitter and Sweet. Diane is an Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science member, 2019 Sundance Creative Producing Fellow, 2019 IFP Cannes Producing Fellow, 2017 and 18 Film Independent Fellow, a Producers Guild of America member, and a recipient of the 2020 Cinerich Producers Award. That's pretty awesome, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so I think I had my questions were going to start off very broadly about the role of a producer in a film, but I just finished watching Wuhan, and I kept putting it off because of the topic, and I didn't know how I was going to take it with like all that's going on in India. But I'm so glad I did. I loved the film. I loved the way how sensitive the director got us into the space. I mean, there were so many like touching and beautiful moments. Let's start off with finding out how you got and at what stage you got involved in that film.
Mm-hmm. Thank you to the Milwaukee Film Festival for having me and to speak with you, Laj, and also Milwaukee Film Festival for having Wuhan the film. I was approached maybe a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, right when, we were in the thick of the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. And Starlight, the company that made the film, which is based in LA, was looking for post-production services. So they reached out to Quon. And then when they were saying what else they needed, Quon said, you really need a producer. And they kindly connected them to me. And when I heard about the story that that they had all this footage that really focused on the people of Wuhan and what they were going through, and to show their resilience, it really spoke to me because of all the only thing I heard about Wuhan was all the negative things, and we wanted to show that they're just humans like us trying to get through this. And I think the thing that really got me was that I found that Young was the director, and I was a big fan of Young. He's based in Toronto. He's done a lot of films in China, and he is a very sensitive director. Like you said, I knew he would be telling the story in a very sensitive, emotional, non-political way, and that's what he did. And it was great. It's the first time where I had like a team of editors that could work with us. And they all spoke Chinese. I don't speak Chinese, but they speak English too, so luckily. But they knew they could, really go through the footage and material with us to find the story. So we did everything virtually. I've not met Young yet or the editors, but we finished it, and it just premiered last month.
Oh, it's beautiful. And today is the last day at Milwaukee Film, and I hope the people get to see the film, find it somewhere, watch it. And I think there is in the YouTube, the director's interview is archived. So I hope people get to that. But tell me, so how was it? Maybe we are moving towards incorporating this virtual way of working now. So how was it, working with directors in LA? And the director is in Toronto, and you are in Chicago.
Right.
Different time zones.
Yeah, it was really, it really worked. You save time not having to travel and we could have everyone on. One of the things I loved was having assistant editors on as well. If it was physical, we probably would be meeting with the lead editor, but because it was virtual, we could have everyone on to get everyone's input and all their thoughts. So I really enjoyed.
Well, Jan said that there is a little bit of a technical lag happening on her end, but she's going to be right back, so we don't have to worry. She'll be back, and we will continue to talk to her about the role. Okay, welcome back.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
I'm so sorry.
No problem.
But I was going to say that I really, as much as I loved the experience of being able to be more inclusive and also be able to work with people from other parts of the country, I did miss, meeting them physically. I still haven't met them, and I'm looking forward to that. But I see that probably happening a lot in the future still. Absolutely.
Because the journey of the film has just started, it seems like.
Yeah.
And well, so yeah, I really enjoyed his sensibility and how sensitively he handled the characters. I don't even know how he managed it. It was quite amazing.
Yeah.
But I think for most, to go back into a broader conversation about talking about the role of a producer, there is always a confusion about what does a producer do, what does a director do. So what is the role of a producer?
Yeah, I mean, my mom and dad always ask me, what does a producer do? I think, I mean, producers, every producer I talk to does, they focus on, depending on the film, they focus on different things. But in general, I would say the producer is working as a partner. I mean, that is my favorite way of working, as a collaborator with the director to make the film possible. So it's hopefully working to make the director's vision possible to get on screen from the beginning to the end. So while he's focusing on the story, although you're working with them in developing the story, I am trying to support and make everything happen so he can do that, so that he can go out and shoot, whether it's finding funding, whether it's creating a timeline, whether it's finding a crew for the director, and working with them closely, or she, to then keep moving forward, keep the film moving forward. And that's so why I say it depends. A producer, what they do depends on the film. Sometimes you get in early from the beginning when you're developing the film. So then that's much, there's much more happening at the development stage. Like just getting access to your characters, figuring that out. But if, like Wuhan, I came in at post stage, everything had already been shot. So my role was different. It was more like finding the editors, working with the producer, the director, to shape the story, and then finding a sales agent so that we could get the film out. So I guess it's like a partner with a director to get the film made and out to an audience. And that's also key to me, is so many directors don't necessarily think about, well, how am I going to get it out to an audience? They just want to make the film. And I want to work on films knowing that eventually all that hard work gets in front of an audience, that it's seen, and hopefully makes a difference in some way.
That's like a dream for a director, like, because being a director, you really are right. Like, we just focused on, like, I just want to tell the story, and the rest is like the exhaustion of making it is done, and we are like, now what do we do? So
yeah, and really, I like to start from the beginning. Like, when we're thinking about the film, I like to think about, well, who are we trying to reach? Who's our potential audience? So as we're creating the film, it's with that knowledge that this is who we want to reach, and also that translates to who we might possibly find funding. So if we know that this is our goal in making this film, then we find people who align with that, who want to fund that.
I think that's a really, and when you find a right partnership with the right producer director, that's like magic, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel so lucky that for Mind the Gap, that was the case. Bing was the first-time director, and I was the first-time producer, and it was just like a dream to work with him. He's just a kind, humble, but very talented director.
Yeah, and I was in the same cohort with Bing in the DVD. Quinn, and my film is not done yet, so probably not to talk about it. But how do you balance the vision of the director with your own vision of, like, you're like, okay, well, the director is focused on the film and crafting the story or the characters, but you know that certain things are important for the success. How do you balance that? What conversations do you have?
Yeah, I think the best relationships, the best collaborations are where the directors and producers really trust each other. And if, for instance, like with Bing, we would have conversations about how to include him. When initially he was not in the film for Mind the Gap. There was Kier and Zach, 2 other characters, and many other characters. But the more we had work in progress screenings, people wanted to know more about him. So there was a lot of conversations on how to include him, and we agreed and sometimes we didn't. And I think we trust each other enough that we'll listen to each other, and eventually it seems to make itself onto the screen. The same with Jenny for Finding Ying Yang. Sometimes there was another producer as well, and sometimes the 3 of us would disagree, and it would just have to be a conversation where we trust each other and keep talking about it, and eventually one comes out to be the way we go to. I try to support the director as much as possible, and there are times that I feel pretty strong about something, and I'm not afraid to say it, but I'm also respectful of the director. That, if it really doesn't make sense to them,
Yeah, it's a really fine line that you're juggling, like between the direct, and then sometimes the editor comes on and they're like, they have their own like vision of
and then sometimes the editor will agree with the director, sometimes with the producer. So that's another whole element that gets thrown into it. But that's the part I enjoy. I like where we really think it through and really challenge each other about what will make the story better.
And what was the most challenging part about Wuhan, like that you felt? Like, I know the virtual part, you all figured that out, but
yeah, I think that the challenging part was that we had over 300 hours of footage, and because both Young and I came in after it was all shot, we had to learn the footage. I mean, we had to learn the stories, versus like in the movie, the 2 films I'm in production right now, I'm along the whole way. So I know what's happening. It's not like I have to catch up. So it was combing through that, and there were many other characters, and finding which characters should be our main characters. We couldn't have 9. It just wouldn't work. So which ones would be the main characters, and what would each be, and the ones we chose, what would their arcs be, and to always stay true to the fact that we wanted to tell their stories, not necessarily what's happening in the rest of the world in terms of the politics of what was happening. We just wanted to be sure that we're telling their truth, their stories, and honestly, and we wanted them to watch. We do the same with like Finding Ying Yang and Minding the Gap. We make sure that the characters watch. Before we picture lock. Mm-hmm.
And what did the characters in Finding, like Wuhan think about? So if they watched it before it went to picture lock.
Well, the Starlight people talked with them. Obviously they agreed and they were fine with it. Yeah. But like Finding Ying Yang, it was very emotional. It was right around the lockdown. We were supposed to be at South by, and it was canceled. So we were going to show it to them before South by, and we couldn't travel to China. So we had to find someone who had helped us film in China, who went into their town, and then we zoomed Jenny in while they're showing the family. And they too were very supportive of the film, and very emotional, but very supportive. And the same, and Minding the Gap, we showed it to the main characters. I was very nervous. I was with Bing.
I can imagine.
The characters are really brave to show their stories. All of them, and
all of them.
All of them.
Yeah, and difficult stories with Finding Ying Yang is kind of sad, but it's still the courage of the family to to be participate in Jenny's vision was
Yeah.
really remarkable.
Yeah.
And what is jumping on to like now that Wuhan is in like the journey of distribution and being seen, has pandemic changed the scene of distribution? What has something? Are you hopeful? Is it good or bad?
I think I mean, the thing I miss about in-person festivals is the buzz that happens. You know, it's hard to get that same sense of like how does the audience react? I have no idea how the audience reacts to the film. We get reviews, but I really miss that. And for Funny and Dilemma Desire, both were supposed to premiere at South by last year, and literally a week before the festival, they decided to not have it. And that was so devastating. Although I think it was the best decision. It could have been a really super spreader, but I really think both films missed out on the buzz, especially like Dilemma Desire, which is about the politics of female desire. So we talk about what it is to be a woman and know her body and how we're treated or seen. It just calls out to have a conversation afterwards with an audience and
Absolutely.
and talking with people about how do you feel about this, and that buzz helps with selling. So my long answer to distribution. So without that, it makes it harder to reach the buyer without that kind of time frame where we're all there and we're all watching and the excitement of the film. And then after that, there was a standstill for a long time because everyone was trying to figure out what next. Should distributors were trying to figure out, should we buy now or wait? What's their pipeline going to be? Filmmakers didn't know whether to show films virtually and how that would affect. But anyway, it was tough. But now I feel like it's starting to pick up again. There's more streamers, and I mean, there seems to be kind of, we're getting at a better place again.
Yeah, and I mean there are more. Yeah, there is a mixed kind of a thing. There are more platforms now to. Mm-hmm. But you definitely, like Milwaukee Film Festival is going on right now, but I definitely miss what you're talking about, the buzz, the excitement, like, you know, we and the sitting in like an line, somebody recommends a film and then you go and watch that film. So I do miss that recommendations from random strangers.
Right. And then that feeds off, because festivals play such an important role too in general, just to get the film out there in front of audiences, and hopefully then buyers hear that it's in all these festivals and they're winning awards, or that audiences are really resonating. It's really resonating. So, you know, we just kind of miss out on all that. But I like I said, I feel hopeful for this year.
Yeah, and I think the journey with Minding the Gap must have been so much more exhilarating, because every step of the way it kept getting more and more like buzz.
Yeah. And I for Minding the Gap, I think actually I always share this. Milwaukee Film Festival was one of my favorite festivals because Kier was here with me, and we were in a theater with hundreds and hundreds of high schoolers from all communities, and to have them chat with Kier was just amazing. Oh, am I frozen?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
I think Plashanda is frozen, but they're working on it.
Okay.
It's in their connection. Yeah.
But I loved seeing the growth in Kier, our character in our film, from when we started in Sundance in January to when we were in Milwaukee in the summer, and seeing his growth in being comfortable and talking with an audience and interacting and not being afraid to answer some hard questions. So to me, that was one of the amazing things, watching Minding the Gap. And of course, all the awards and distribution, getting Hulu, and that was really exciting. But just as exciting was going on the road and seeing people's audience reaction. And so I do feel sad for Jenny. I'm really hoping which Funnying was her first film, so she hasn't experienced a screen in front of a live audience like that. And I'm hoping that we can still do that.
I'm really hoping for that. Yeah. And as you're talking about minding the gap, I'll take an audience question here. Brian wants to know, how did you find the main 3 skaters in Minding the Gap?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, one of them is Bing, and he is the director. He's part of the skateboarding community, so he is always with them, and it was important to him that he finds people that are authentic, and really are part of the skateboarding community. So all of them grew up in Rockford, which is where Bing grew up. He knew Zach growing up, and what we were looking for were stories that seem to have some kind of journey. And at the time when he reconnected with Zach just found out he was about to have a baby. So it seemed like this is a great character to follow his journey as he becomes a father, because a lot of the film is about father-son relationships. Plus, Zach is a charismatic person, and for your docs that are going to follow a person, you want folks who are going to be genuine and not be afraid to show who they are. Mm-hmm. And then Keir, someone Bing sort of knew, but not as well, because Keir was a lot younger. He's like 7 years younger. But as soon as he met Keir, reconnected with Keir, and Keir, I think the first interview he talked about experiencing abuse. I think that really resonated with Bing, who himself had experienced abuse. And again, Keir is so charismatic and so open and fun to be with. We thought he would be a great character to follow as well. Bing had followed many other characters, and just like Wuhan, it was like narrowing it down and whittling out characters and then focusing more on the 3, Keir, Zach, and Bing. And I think that a lot of films have to do that. You follow different characters to see which one seems to go with the story best, or will resonate with the story best, and then you whittle down. And work in progress screenings, we saw that too. Certain characters confused people, other characters just resonated with the audience more. So I encourage that to all filmmakers, have work in progress screenings.
Have work in progress screenings, get some feedback.
Yeah.
Well, talking about that, I think I would love to get some advice from you for young, or new or first-time director producers who are just starting out. How does and most of us are in the scarcity mindset. We only know how to work with less. So what advice do you have for them to build? Well, first of all, build a relationship, finding a director, finding your crew. How do you go about building that?
Well, for me, it has tended to be the director finds me. Usually the director has a story, and usually for me, I like to know that the director has access to the story and has a vision. In terms of docs, especially, often, unless it's a biopic or it's historical, you don't know what the ending is going to be. But I still think you should have an idea of what you hope the film will be. It may end up being totally different or somewhat different, but you have to have some kind of vision for the film. And so a director traditionally comes in with a story in the doc world. In the fiction world, it's opposite. I optioned the book Hotel, and then I had to find a director. So I got the IP and then I looked for a director. But for docs, generally, it's the director and their connection with the story has to be really true, and I have to feel like there's access. Because the worst thing is to commit time and start working and then realize we can't follow that person after all, or that topic after all, and then you're, back to square one. So I think that's the best the most important relationship is a director finding a producer that aligns with them and believes in their story, and both feel passionate, because it's, most docs take a long time. Like you were saying that you started in Diva at the same time as Big. And so the people you work with, you want to know that you're both aligned and passionate about the story.
Because
I always say too, if you can choose something, it's important. For me, it helps when a director shows me something before I make a decision to come on.
Right. And then also, like, I think having a passion for the story, because you're going to live with the story for so long.
Yeah. If you have to care about the story, because and so that's why when I say no to projects, it's not because I don't think the film is important. Almost every film I've been presented they are important stories. They just aren't necessarily something that I feel passionate about or makes sense for me. But you'll find that person, and then that person will be the right partner.
Right person, yeah. And then there's another terms of giving advice. A lot of us, and I did this too, where you jump into a fiction and you make a fiction right away, and then it's kind of exhausting, like we talked about initially.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what do you do with this baby you gave birth to? But so do you advise filmmakers to start making like short films first?
Yes. I always, even myself, I'm not a director, and I don't think I'll ever be like directing another thing. But so I really started in producing 6 years ago, and the year before that, before I started Minding the Gap, I had tried to get volunteer at Kirkton, and they didn't need anybody. So the only way I thought I could start was maybe I make my own short film. I took filmmaking classes at Chicago Filmmakers, and just every time I learned something, I tried to apply it to the short. And it really helped me understand, like, even in a short that was only 20 minutes, how a film is made. And so that when someone approached me, or when I approached people about producing, I could at least know what the process is. I could talk about it somewhat like I knew what I was talking about. So I'm always so grateful for doing that short. It was like a quick way. It still took me a year, but it didn't take me 6 years, or 4 to 6 years, which a feature doc or a fiction film takes. So I really encourage, I tell that to filmmakers all the time, because it's also a great way to start learning about festivals, how festivals work, how does distribution work, how do you find an editor, how do you find music, how do you clear music, just all the basics that you'll need for a feature. And it's a great proof of concept for a future feature film if you decide to work on it in a bigger scale.
Yeah, I hope new directors are listening to this because I have a few more questions. What are you working on now? You're working on multiple projects, and while you're talking about that, like maybe also talk about how do you juggle like so many roles in each project?
So I'm working on, the thing about working on new projects, you're still also working on the past projects as well. finding we just finished like making a distribution deal in China. We already have one here in the rest of the world with MTV, but we needed someone in China. So we're just finishing that. Dilemma Desire, we just signed on with a distributor. And so we're trying to figure out that distribution partner. So those are the past. And then Wuhan just started out there. Another film that's about to come out, and I hope is at Milwaukee Film Festival at some point, is For the Left Hand. And it's about a man, wonderful man, Norman Malone, who was discovered at age 78 that
okay, Diane will be back.
Plays with just his left hand. Am I back? Okay. So For the Left Hand is about Norman Malone, who plays the piano with one hand, with the left hand, because he's paralyzed on the right side. And he was discovered at age 78 and now is playing concerts. But we really want to show his journey, not so much of the past, but like moving forward as a 78-year-old, you know, fondly doing something that he is passionate about. And that's directed by Gordon Quinn and Leslie Simmer. And Gordon is the founder of Cartemplin,
yes,
which to me was what drew me especially to the project. I mean, I play piano, so I love music, but also to work with Gordon. And this is his first film in 10 years where he's directed. So that's going to be done in a month, and then we'll be bringing it out for distribution. And then the two in production, one is about the 19th News film, which the 19th News is a digital newsroom, a new newsroom, all female, non-binary. And they're really trying to upend the traditional newsroom, which is primarily white and male, and which kind of affects like what stories are told and who tells them. And for me personally, and I don't know how you feel, Laj, but this year has been so tough with the anti-Asian violence. And I don't know for you, but so many people say to me, I didn't know that you're experiencing racism or hate crimes. And I'm going, this is not an old news story. I mean, all my life, I had to explain why I belong or had those racist taunts to me. But, you know, those stories just weren't usually told. And so this new newsroom is hoping by having a diverse newsroom that these kind of stories will be told. So we're following their first 18 months. And there's so many. The other one is about a Palestinian American film producer who's in prison, who is reconnecting with his son, who's an actor. So, and they're using arts and music to reconnect.
You're working on such like heart-wrenching topics, and also to touch upon the racism. I think there is a lot of like people, I don't know whether they tune off or whether it's like lack of sensitivity, but the news is filled with like the violence against Asian American. And I have a friend here, she's 70 some, and she's from, her parents, her ancestors are from China, but she's from here, she's American. Mm-hmm. And her question to me was like, Laj, why are people angry with me? And this is a woman who has contributed like tremendously to the community, and then we have no answer. It's wrong. It's terrible, and we are already dealing with COVID and so many other things. Yeah. And to have this on top of that.
Right. I would say, you know, for so long I didn't go out, except not even to the grocery store, because my husband loves to go to the grocery store, so he would do the shopping. And the first time I went out in a long time to a public place, I was afraid. You know, I hadn't been in so long. That feeling of like, is someone going to look at me and spit at me or tell me that I'm responsible for the virus? And I guess I really appreciate that, especially with this month, you know, there is a focus on like, we need to tell these stories that and not just brush it aside and until this happens again, maybe 10 years later, that this isn't a new story. So let's try to deal with this.
Yeah, and the Asian American Documentary Network, ADOC, has sent out a call. Like,
Yeah.
I think they are making a lot of films.
Yeah, I mean, your film, your short, I saw that before you shared with me on ADOCs, when they had posted it when it first came out. It's so powerful. And that's why I say even a short too. That was 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You can say so much
Thank
in just a short time.
Yeah, I realized the power of short films after responding to ADOC's call, and they made all these COVID stories, and I realized that there is a power even in short stories, a power in like I would never have done. People, most directors are like behind the camera, and I would have never done that film.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I realized the power of that, like speaking up and showing like who we are, the diversity of America. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I thought that was so well made, and it even in 2 minutes, I think to young filmmakers or new emerging filmmakers, it shows that you know how to tell a story, whether it's in 2 minutes or 90 minutes.
Absolutely. And then talking about when the making a short film and a long film, Brian has another question for you here, and he says, how do you know like when the documentary is finished? Because a lot of times we are it's very enticing for a filmmaker to like keep filming and filming and filming because there's a beautiful shot, a beautiful emotion, the character is going through. Like the journey is never done for a character. But when do we know? Okay, this is done. Now you have to stop and move to
Yeah. Well, for instance, for Minding the Gap, I mean, Bing had been shooting for many years before I came on, and then we worked together for another couple of years, and it was 3 years before it actually was broadcast. And I think what I did was I just put a timeline, and I said, let's aim for this date to have it done. And so once we did that, it was kind of like, okay, whatever, but where we've shot, now's the time to edit it and see if we can make, he already had been editing along the way. But to your question, Brian, it was, to your point, he could have shot many more years, but for me, it was like, we need to put a deadline and a timeline. And then it's funny how you do end up finding you have an end, a natural ending. And so by putting the timeline, it caused us to start looking at all the footage. What's the natural ending to this? And then we also applied to film festivals. And so when it wasn't finished yet completely when we applied to Sundance, but when we got in, it's like, okay, we're finished. we gotta finish. So I just encourage in your mind, to put a deadline to it. Especially, I know for me, I reach out to funders and investors, and of course, it's still, the story should be ready when it's ready, but I also want to be mindful of the people who I feel are partners in your film, that we can't say it's going to be another 10 years, just to be fair to them as well, that they to be able to just show them where their funding went to, and to see the reality of it.
And then resources are finite, and post-production is exorbitant. So
yeah, it's so true, and then at least for me as a producer too, you were asking about how I juggle it. I want to work on many films. I want to be able to, I'm old. I want to do as many films as I can now, and so it means I, you know, maybe it's selfish, but I can't work on a film, you know, for 6 years. I have to feel like there's a timeline that the director feels they can also work towards.
Yeah, I think all directors need a Diane telling you, okay, need a timeline. What's your timeline?
My background, you know, was in marketing at Paramount, and I had so many, and this is why I can juggle. Sometimes we have like 18 projects at the same time, but with budgets and different release schedules. And so marketing really translated really well to being a producer, I feel. And I try to, you know, I have 2 in production, 2 in development, you know, 2 in post, so that they're not necessarily all in the same stage at the same time. Although in the doc world, things can change real fast.
Right.
But in general, I try to do that.
And so I think we kind of touched upon this, but what are the biggest mistakes directors make that can be avoided?
Yeah, I think, well, I personally love verite films, and I love where the story comes out of, or the issues or the things that we're going to talk about that are important comes out of the story that we film, not because a talking head or a statistic tells us, you know, trauma is bad, or that international students are coming into the United States at a lower pace, you know, something like that. I rather see it come out of the story that we're following. And so what I think, there's the thing that I always encourage directors is to leave the camera on and shoot as much as possible. I know, but having said that, if you know you have enough of one thing, another mistake is keep on filming more of the same thing, and it's just not useful too, because resources are so
Limited.
Yeah. So to just be really thoughtful about what you're filming.
Mm-hmm.
I think also the directors sometimes don't think broadly enough. Like when people pitch me often, they'll say, this is I'll say, who do you think your audience, who do you want to reach? And they'll say, you know, an Asian American who plays the piano. And I'm like, well, there's going to be a lot of other people that you want to reach. And I mean, I could see it. They might not see it, but I encourage them to think that way, making it as broad as possible, especially if you do want to convince a distributor or a partner to buy your film eventually or have it out there. They need to know that it has a broader audience than, you know, an Asian American who plays the piano. You know, they need to feel that it can resonate with.
Okay, she'll be back. It's coming right back. And so if any of the audience have any questions, you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, she's back.
I'm back. I'm so sorry.
No, it wasn't like you really come back very quickly. So
okay, good.
I think we are. So it's not to. We have a few more questions for you, and then we'll be wrapping up. But so generally, you worked with a lot of and I wish I could talk about each film that you worked on, because each of them is so touched me so emotionally when I saw the trailer, with whether it's the Dilemma of Desire or Finding Ying Ying, or I'm so apologize, I didn't turn my phone off. I apologize for that. But what film had the most challenge that you faced? So if you can talk about one example that you overcame, in any of your films, it doesn't, and how did you overcome them? A challenge.
Mm-hmm. I think for Finding Ying Ying, one of the challenges was when the family. So the story is about a young woman, Ying Ying, who is from China, who had been in the United States for 6 weeks studying at University of Illinois, and unfortunately disappeared. And was murdered. And her parents come from China, don't speak English, and they're trying to deal with the American criminal justice system. So when they do come back, when finally 2 years later, the trial happens, you know, our hope had been to follow them during the whole trial, but we had to be sensitive to them. They didn't want to be filmed. So here was, we had been waiting for months and months for them to come back so that we can put that as part of our story. So it was trying to navigate. So what are we going to do? What are we going to film? And how do we respect them, but also encourage them at the same time? So it was little by little reaching out, taking baby steps to get them comfortable for us to film again, because it would have been a big hole in the story if we didn't talk about like what happens when they try to find justice. And I give credit to Jenny and Shalyn, the co-producer, DP. They were really patient, and we just had a lot of conversations. Okay, every day was like, what are we going to try to do today? Or who else can we talk to while we're trying to wait for the family? Or who else can we talk to who might talk to the family for us? Because this goes back to losing access. You know, it's scary when your main characters say, I don't want to do this anymore. But we were all able to slowly but surely just earn their trust that we would totally work with what feels comfortable with them. And so they let us in little at a time until they were comfortable again.
So it shows that building trust is so primary.
So critical. Yeah. And really, I know there's a lot of conversation about who tells the story. And I think that's why it's so important, you know, because Jenny was an international student, just like Ying Ying, who had disappeared. The family really trusted her. And I don't know if someone else could have, except for another international student, you know, that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good example. And I think in terms of like finding access and finding characters who will trust you to tell this, that is, I mean, without them, there is no story.
Yeah, there is no story. And and like I said, you might have, in this case, she had already been shooting for 2 years, and it'd be really tough to make a true story. But if you don't have access in the beginning, then you're really stuck. So I think that's key for a director, is to make sure they have access. The other mistake is not getting releases.
Yeah.
I just encourage, usually the director is first before producer comes on. So even as a director, I think it's important for you to understand that you need releases, because it's a lot easier to get it before you start shooting than doing it a year or 2 years later and then realizing now you got to ask them permission to sign. So I'm going just through that now with another film that's in post, because I came in really late. And so that's something I always encourage directors, is to think about that.
This was so exciting, and thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward to the film, Gordon's new film, because I saw on another Zoom call, like they gave an introduction to the film, and I saw the clips of it, and Gordon came on and talked, and I haven't been in a session in a class with Gordon. I'm like so excited that he also got COVID but recovered, and he's making a film.
Yeah, I mean, that film, that's another challenge. I mean, we were about to be in the last session of editing. We were in a work in progress screening for the Left Hand. This is in March, the week before the city closed down. And then Gordon told me he was going to the hospital with COVID.
Gosh.
That was like, of course, you're not thinking about the film. We're thinking just about like, Gordon, will you be okay? But what helped me was I would text him. I would like keep going forward, and I would text him an email as if he was reading them, because I thought one day he's going to be reading them. And thankfully he did, and really happy for that he's doing great. And Laush, I just love your sensibility and the topics that you choose. And they're so diverse. I think that's so important that we're telling all different kinds of stories. I know that's what keeps me going is I'm doing something that I hadn't done before and covering news stories. And I see that in the work you choose, and
Thank you.
really beautiful.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that you saying that. And I'm so thankful that you came, and I'm hoping that you come to Milwaukee. We would love to host you here whenever it's possible with this pandemic. I think
Yeah.
we're opening up, but I really love pretty much all the films that you made, and I watched some of them, and it's a similar sensibility of like being so kind and so respectful of the characters that we film, and I loved that. So hoping that we'll meet again in Chicago and Milwaukee very soon.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Thank you so much. And
Thank
you,
you.
Milwaukee Film Festival, Kara.
Yeah, on behalf of Milwaukee Film Festival.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And donate.
Yes, please donate. Today's your last day to donate. Please donate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.